take some of the names. We all know the top names by gaming downloads or revenue. We all know the top markets. But if you look at the rest of the markets, those are the markets where you look at this and make sure that your penetration is actually, if you are equally penetrated across these markets, if you are not, then those markets could be an opportunity for you. Additionally, if we here we have mapped the markets basis download growth on the x-axis and download growth on the x-axis, download share on the x-axis, and download growth on the y-axis. So if you want to also spot that which are those emerging markets, so those would be good opportunities where if you are looking from a scale perspective, these are some of the emerging markets which are growing fast and could offer you great potential to scale your gaming business. Now, if we are to map the similar trend on revenue growth versus the revenue share, then the overall revenue is actually dominated by the big markets like US, Japan, China. But if we are to just enlarge this particular area, which is a bit cluttered, here you would see that markets like Taiwan, France, Hong Kong, Switzerland, Mexico, Turkey, these are a couple of markets which are growing really fast in terms of their revenue capability. And those are markets where you can, if you are, let's say, focusing from a IIP based monetization or from an overall revenue perspective, you can at least test these markets whether they can deliver good potential for you, because it seems that they are delivering at a global scale and they are some of the fast rising markets. Additionally, what we did is we also looked at those markets in comparison to two main metrics. One is which are the markets which can offer you a lower CPI and a higher return potential. That's where if you look at some of the markets like Brazil and Mexico, these are two interesting markets where the CPI cost is pretty low, but the return potential is also comparable to that of the advanced economies. So that's where this is one way where you can also look at your data in your data set. So whenever you are testing markets, that which are those markets where you can get a good combination of these two metrics. Additionally, we understand that a lot of app marketers in India focus on ad-based monetization. So that's where user engagement, understanding user engagement is also something which becomes very, very important. So that's where if you look at the average time spent and the average session length by different markets, then that's where the Southeast Asian markets are the ones which top in terms of user engagement, like Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand. And so these are a couple of markets where the user engagement is significantly higher and hence your potential to generate revenue through advertising. So that's where you should also take a look across the markets from a user engagement point of view so that it can deliver you better results. And just one last metric is also retention, because we have seen that there are gaming app marketers who want to understand how the long-term retention, that is day 30, and short-term retention like day 1 numbers also look like. Because again, these would play a higher impact on your revenue generation capabilities. And that's where markets like Egypt, Indonesia, France, Mexico are the markets where they have a higher short-term retention, that is day 1 retention. But markets like other markets like UK, France are the markets where you have a long-term retention, like day 30 retention numbers are pretty high for these markets. So these could be good combination of data points to understand which markets to focus basis your revenue generation capabilities. And one important point is whenever you decide to work in or enter in particular markets, always talk to your MMPs to understand which are the top partners in that particular geography, or what are the CPI benchmarks and things like that. Because your MMPs are very well placed to have all this data in place and help you understand how once you decide on the market, what are a couple of benchmarks which can help you assess your performance in that particular market with respect to your category. So always speak to your MMPs regarding this kind of data requirements. The second most important lever is your revenue streams. So on the revenue streams, like Ram also mentioned in the morning, that there are we see game developers trying to experiment with different forms of revenue models. Like earlier it was just IIP, and they have started to experiment with in-app purchase because they want to hedge their bets. And that's why if you see towards the start of 2022, their IIP revenue share has increased from 6% to 24% in March 23. So basically, means you need to. The point is that even the hyper casual game developers are trying to focus on different revenue streams to hedge their bets. I know this is a difficult market, but somewhere you need to take that call and start it. Additionally, there are other forms of monetization models also which have come up. Like for example, in hyper casual category, you can see there is one model called ad removals, where basically the user could pay to remove ads and play the games. And this is something which we have seen almost, according to a Sensor Tower report, almost 40% of the titles adopting this particular method. So the point is, you can also test with different forms of monetization models like these, basis your game category, and see whether you can test it on a small group first to understand whether you see acceptance for that particular monetization model, and if yes, then take forward to scale it. Similarly, in the RPG and strategy category, there are different monetization models like a season pass or subscription. So, where once you pay for that particular pass, you get an upgraded experience. So basically, these are different forms of monetization models. Not everything would suit your type of game. Model might be suitable for you. Test it on a small group, and basis that you can then scale the successful experiments. And even on the revenue lever, there is one thing where we have one area where a lot of app marketers should focus on is how you can reduce the time to the revenue or the break. How you can reduce the time and get more money in or get a faster revenue cycle. So basically, it is also called a payback period. That is time when the cash starts coming in or time to break even. So that's where this should be a focus area, because I know a lot of growth managers would be immense pressure to generate cash flows. So that's where this is one important lever within the revenue. And just couple of tips how you can get this is for advertisers or for gaming publishers who focus on ad-based monetization. They can actually look at cohorts, markets, or geographies who have a faster payback time. That is one ROS is one excellent metric where you can actually compare that which are the markets which are delivering you faster cash generating returns or better break-even points, so that you can focus on those markets. Additionally, for games which are focusing more on an IAP-based monetization model, they can actually look at the pricing and promotion aspect. That is, for example, if you are looking at, you can actually look at the mix of your IAPs, whether you have high ticket items or low ticket items. Especially in this kind of an environment where the macroeconomics are difficult, you can actually increase the mix of low ticket items. So basically, that would help you to generate faster cash compared to having a higher mix of high ticket items. So that kind of monetization model you can also take into account. Additionally, for example, one more example is if you are a subscription app, then instead of focusing or prioritizing on your short term like 1 month subscription or 2 months, try to promote the subscription packs which are long term, like a half yearly or a yearly pack, so that you can actually book those long term revenues upfront. So basically, those could be some levers how you can focus on to generate faster cash flow. And additionally, even when you are working with payment processors or on the partner side, you can always check if there is any room for negotiation. Like for example, with payment partners, you can see if there is any way you can actually process the payment faster or get the cash inflow at a much lower time. And on the partner front, the acquisition partner, you can actually check if they can have a more flexible payback time. So basically, those are a couple of ways how you can actually improve your existing cash flows as well. And additionally, one very important lever, like I mentioned, everyone goes for this metric called ROS. And one way you would want to improve your ROS is your existing users are something which could hold the answer to it. Because you must have heard this statistic multiple times this year that almost 65% of a company's revenue comes from 5% comes from their existing users, and just a 5% increase can increase the profits by 25 to 95%. So basically, coming to the game specific, like we have generally, if you look at the behavior, almost 1 in every 3 gamers tries a new game basis the recommendation from his friends and family. So that's where this is a very good, if you don't have a referral program in place, then you should definitely focus on referral mechanism. And even within that, if you look at the conversion percentage, that is basis referral links, almost 12% of the users who click on a link go on to download that particular app. And in case of social, almost 7% of the users who click on a social app, go on to download an app. So basically these two are really good channels in increasing your organic mix and thereby lowering your overall cost per acquisition. So if referral programs or these are not on your priority list, they should scale up your priority list right now. And even within them, social is also another channel where you can focus. Yep. And yeah, one best practice whenever you are running a social campaign or a referral campaign, we would always advise you to use branded links and social sharing previews, because these are some things which can help you to even improve the performance of your referral campaigns further. Because these days, because of the amount of scam and fraud going on, users would be very hesitant to click on links which look suspicious. So that's where products like branded links and social sharing previews would give them that confidence that this is an authentic link, and thereby increasing your conversions further. So this is one important tip which you should always keep in mind if you are running a referral campaign. Yeah, and one just last lever is the iOS, wherein if you remember, I showed you in the start that iOS, the overall revenues of gaming had declined by 1%. Now, if you break it down by Android versus iOS, then what happened in 2021 is in April when ATT framework was released. At that time, when the overall game downloads on Android increased by 2%, but was it able to compensate for the revenue? So the answer is not, because if you see, though the downloads on Android increased by 2% for games, the revenue declined by 2%. And similarly, however, if you look at the same numbers on iOS side, then despite the downloads declined by 2% on iOS, the revenue almost remains same, which clearly indicates that monetization potential of iOS is very important for you. And here means this chart shows you the revenue per download for different gaming categories in iOS versus Android. And that's where if you see for most of the categories, the revenue generated for the iOS user is almost 2x that of Android. So means though we all know that this is a very important lever to improve your overall monetization potential, we should still focus, means we have seen the focus going down, but we should take this very seriously. And one interesting thing over here, within card games, we have seen that though the share of card games is just 2%, which means limited competition, the monetization potential is really pretty high. So, in case if you are looking to develop games in a category, then this could be a good category. Yeah, and the thing which I mentioned earlier, that when ATT was released in Q2 of 2021, that's where this is what you are seeing over here is the share of user acquisition spend on iOS versus Android. So before ATT was released in Q2 2021, the share of iOS in the overall acquisition spend was 36%, which fell to literally 23%, and now it has come back to the original pre-ATT level at a global scale. That is for gaming advertisers. The share of spends on iOS has recovered. But if you look at the same numbers for Indian game publishers, they have not recovered. Earlier, before ATT released, the share of iOS spend was 18%, which has come to 13% till now. So basically, Indian app marketers are still hesitant to run on iOS campaigns, and that's where we really feel that this is a lever which is not being utilized to the fullest, and you should focus on. So that, and once you take this into account, the most important points for iOS campaign would be to increase your consent rates, and that's where if you see these numbers, these are the consent rates for the ATT across different markets, wherein markets like Indonesia, Brazil, Thailand, Vietnam are markets which are more accommodative and would give you consent to track the users. Whereas markets like mostly the Western markets like Germany, US, UK, they are very less accommodative, and unless you give them a very strong reason as to why you want to track their usage, they would not give you that permission. So you can always use these benchmarks to see where you are performing versus these particular benchmarks. Yeah, and just on the last point is, since this is a very important lever, because ultimately you would still want to have as much user level data, because the more user level data you have, the better your prediction models are going to be. And that's where it is very important to understand how you can improve these consent rates. And again, I would say that if you are finding any challenge on the iOS front or scaling the iOS campaign, go and talk to your MMP. Your MMP already has solutions and they have done a lot of heavy lifting. So I would really suggest you to check with your MMPs on how you can actually improve these consent rates or again overall scale your iOS campaigns. So those are just couple of levers which I just wanted to mention today on how you can optimize. And in case if you are curious to again understand more on the iOS front, so we had recently done a in-depth webinar with Snapchat. You can actually check it and deep dive into it to understand more. So those were a couple of levers I felt that I should put forward on how overall gaming publishers can improve their monetization. So that's it. Any questions you guys have? I think we can break for lunch, but in case if a question comes in later, we are always there. We have a booth over here, so you can always feel free to come and reach out to us in case we are in. Thank you.